What an innocent looking problem. Solve by completing the square. Well, yeah, you're going to have to use that method because we don't have another method. Solve 2x squared minus 6x equals negative 3. Okay. Step 1 is to isolate the x squared and x term in parentheses on the left side. That's basically already done, so we can essentially skip step 1. But step 2 is to factor out what? Factor out the coefficient that's multiplying x squared. Okay? Don't pull out the greatest common factor. No, I'm saying pull out the number that's multiplying x squared, but you have to pull it out of both terms on the left side. So it's 2 times parenthesis x squared minus 3x. Now, if you forget that minus 3x, you're in big trouble. So don't forget to factor it out of both terms in the parentheses. Okay, so that's equal to negative 3. Step 3, we need to get rid of that number that we just factored out, and we do that by dividing both sides by that coefficient 2. Divide both sides by 2, it cancels. We get x squared minus 3 equals negative 3 halves. So there you see, we were able to rewrite this problem carefully as 1 times x squared, the invisible 1 times x squared, minus whatever times x equals whatever number. Now we're ready for step 4. Step 4 is to add half the coefficient of the x term in a bracket and square it to both sides. So the coefficient of x is negative 3. So this is x squared minus 3x. Now add bracket half negative 3 squared. See, that's half the coefficient of x and then square the bracket. That's equal to the other side plus the same thing, 1/2 times negative 3 bracket squared. Step 5 is to simplify inside the bracket only. So bring the rest of it down, and inside the bracket, 1/2 times negative 3 is negative 3 halves. Do that on both sides. Step 5 is to simplify, or step 6, simplify the right-hand side. Okay, so bring down the left side, don't do anything to it. And on the right side, start simplifying. Negative 3 halves squared is a negative times a negative, which is a positive, and 3 halves times 3 halves, top times top over bottom times bottom is 9/4. Continue simplifying. Well, you got to get a common denominator, right, guys? So negative 3 halves is negative 6/4. See, all I did was I multiplied the top and bottom of negative 3 halves by 2. Now we have a common denominator, and we can add these two fractions together. Just add across the top. Negative 6 plus 9 is going to give me a negative 3. So this is equal to, a positive 3. A positive 3 over 4. Now I'm just going to bring down the left-hand side for all those steps so you can see where we're at. It's x squared minus 3x plus bracket negative 3 halves squared equals the right side simplified 3/4. Now step 7 is to factor the left side. So if you want to use a formula, use the formula. If not, use a shortcut. It is parenthesis x plus whatever's in the bracket, including the sign. Now don't forget, this is the first time I think we've seen a negative sign inside the bracket. So be sure that you're going to do x plus a negative 3 halves, close your parenthesis, squared. X plus the value in the bracket, including the sign, close your parenthesis and square it. So we have parenthesis x plus a negative is minus 3 halves squared. Bring down the other side. So you see, we were able to rewrite that as x plus the stuff in the bracket, including either the positive or negative sign, whichever it was. In this case, it was negative. And then close the parenthesis and square it. Now, I wouldn't write plus a negative because that's kind of clunky. I just write x minus 3 halves. It's the same thing. Step 8 is where we take plus or minus the square root of both sides in order to eliminate the square on the left. So plus or minus the square root of 3 halves. So that's plus or minus. Okay, you see what I did here? I busted the square root up on the top and the bottom. That's legal because the square root of a fraction is equal to the square root of the top over the square root of the bottom. And the bottom is nice. It's a perfect square. So the square root of the bottom is actually a nice number. It's 2. All right, so let's write that. X minus 3 halves equals plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. Step 9, let's bust this apart and see what we get. Well, we get x equals 3 halves plus the square root of 3 over 2, which can be written as 3 plus the square root of 3 all over 2. Or the union symbol, x equals 3 halves minus the square root of 3 over 2, which you can write over a common denominator, 3 minus the square root of 3 over 2. Now, you didn't really have to go through all that. You could have simplified and written your answer as a single expression, 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 all over 2. And that does represent those two different values, just in a compact form.